But I had mentioned the DuSable in that article, and talking about our history and our just sort of integral, uh, you know, connection to the structure, the physical structure, and the financial structures of this country. So, for this opportunity to testify before you today. And also, it gives me great pleasure to speak on behalf of the ancestors who we celebrate, who struggled, and without whom we would not be here. So we begin with a quote from Malcolm X, Black nationalist leader, whose words spoken in 1964 are very relevant to our conversation about reparations today. So he writes, "If you stick a knife in my back 9 inches and pull it out 6 inches, there's no progress. If you pull it all the way out, that's not progress. Progress is healing the wound that the blow made. And they haven't even pulled the knife out, much less heal the wound. They won't even admit the knife is there." So for us, state and local reparations do not stop the harm. They are compensation for the victims for the harms that they incurred. We view reparations as the compensation. So what is reparations? The program of acknowledgement, redress, and closure. A special thanks to the Reverend Dr. Jonathan Brooks for setting the stage. Acknowledgement, the culpable party's admission for the atrocity. Admission should include an enumeration of the damages inflicted upon the victims and the advantages appropriated by the culpable party and an agreement to undertake redress. So it requires action, right? Sincerity and action. Redress, acts of restitution, steps taken to heal the wound, monetary payments. I want to say that the admission of responsibility should insulate a reparations plan from adverse judicial review. This is one of the comments that we hear often. This is not going to happen if you're focusing on race, right? But if you're talking about a plan that is undergirded with judicial, that is, what am I trying to say? A plan that is sort of protected from judicial review. This is something that we are advocating. So acts of restitution or redress, which is steps taken to, quote, heal the wound. This is monetary payments. People often say to us, well, it's more than a check. And we say, let's start with that check. Okay? And then we'll talk about the other programs. Let's run that experiment. And then C, this is ARC, A-R-C, the C of ARC, closure. This is perhaps the most controversial aspect of the plan. So it's an agreement by both the victims and the perpetrators that the account is settled. Representatives chosen by members of the aggrieved community can communicate with the culpable party to establish the point at which restitution is adequate for the debt to be paid. So no further claims would be made by the victims unless atrocities were repeated. I mean, we reserve the right to come back if atrocities are repeated or if new atrocities are inflicted upon Black Americans since U.S. slavery. So what are the criteria for eligibility? So the first we say is at least one ancestor for the individual must have been enslaved in the United States. One ancestor. Self-identified also individuals as Black on an official document for at least 12 years before the enactment of reparations or the creation of a reparations commission. So you can't wake up tomorrow and say, I'm Black. Once you learn that reparations are a thing, because we know there will be people who will say, well, my great, okay, 12 years. Nor do they include persons living as Black whose ancestors were not enslaved in the United States, or were, right? Anyone who is, not living as Black cannot be part of the committee of eligibility. So they probably do have a claim against their country of origin. So, for example, from Nigeria, Ghana, Trinidad, Jamaica, Antigua, yes, you absolutely have a reparations claim, but not to the U.S. government. That claim would be brought to the UK, the United Kingdom. It's interesting, there's an organization called CARICOM that exists to make reparations claims for individuals in the Caribbean. They don't include Black Americans, nor should they. But the reverse is also true. So, three phases of atrocities that we want to focus on. People often talk about slavery reparations. We kind of flinch when we hear that term. It's not just slavery. Yes, slavery is a crucible from which all of these ills emitted, were born, but it's much, much more than that. So we also have the Jim Crow era, which I think is an absurd term. Let's call it what it was: 100 years of white terror campaigns. All right? Ongoing atrocities, mass incarceration, police execution of unarmed black people, sustained credit, housing, and employment discrimination, and the immense black-white wealth disparity, which we're going to talk about at some length. Black American descendants of U.S. slavery have borne and continue to bear the undue burden of the cumulative effects of all three of these phases of the nation's trajectory of racial injustice. So, the bill, right? Who should pay the bill, reparations bill? And that is, who's responsible for the existence of the racial wealth gap? So, the U.S. government is both the culpable and the capable party. When we look at the Civil War, right, as it was grinding to a halt, President Abraham Lincoln approved the Port Royal project with allocations of 40. This is while the war was still happening, right? Black people were receiving 40-acre land grants, and these are black people who supported the Union, right? Many of them had, run away from the plantations where they had been enslaved. The program was formalized on 16th of January, 1865, with General William T. Sherman's Special Field Orders Number 15, which designated some 5.3 million acres of land. This land was confiscated from the Confederates along the Atlantic coast, stretching from the South Carolina Sea Islands to the mouth of the St. Johns River in Florida. So it's interesting. Many people have reported that an allocation of 400,000 acres was made, but in fact it was 5.3 million acres. We did the math, sort of doing the calculations, looking at those the different districts, and we're talking about 5.3 million acres of land. In fact, 40,000 African American families were settled on these lands. In fact, many people think, well, yeah, black people got those 40 acres a mule. Some did, for a short period of time. Abraham Lincoln's assassinated. His successor, Andrew Johnson, restores the land to the former Confederates. At the same time, though, the federal government was reneging on its promise to compensate the formerly enslaved population for their years of bondage. In 1862, it enacted the Homestead Act. And the Homestead Act gave not 40 acres, but 160 acres to white Americans, including recent European immigrants. So we're talking now about land that combined land mass was larger than Texas and California combined. This is what white Americans received. That promise, advantaged white population, was kept. Some 270 million acres of land. So 1.5 million white households were the recipients of this federal enrichment program. Today, that amounts to 30 to 45 million white Americans who are currently reaping the benefits of that government handout. The last land grant from this project to be completed was in 1980 in Alaska. Okay, so this was, a government handout of the highest order. This was the origin of the racial wealth gap. The government made and, the government sustained the racial wealth gap. There are many, many examples of government action and inaction that improve the financial well-being of whites while minimally impacting blacks. I'm going to give three examples just really quickly. The Chicago race riots, right, of 1919, which resulted in the loss of at least 23 black lives, hundred black people sustained serious injuries, over 1,000 black people lost their homes. The federal government did not step in and restore them. The city did not restore them, the state did not restore them. This was a case where, there were eyewitnesses, to the initial causes of the riot. Names were given to the police, and yet justice was not served. Move forward to 1944, the Servicemen's Readjustment Act, or the GI Bill, disproportionately provided education, home loan, unemployment benefits to white veterans while building the white middle class in the process. Home ownership and a college education became a reality. In fact, Sandy's and my fathers both received the GI Bill for education, not to purchase a business, not to buy a farm, not to buy a house. Um, so, to give you some idea of the numbers that we're talking about, 16 million veterans, 14 million of them are white, who received benefits. Less than 500,000 in the entire country, black veterans received benefits, and most of those who did were for education. In the state of Mississippi, in 1 year, so Mississippi had 85,000 black veterans. No, that's right. Mississippi, 85,000 black veterans, men and women. How many do you think received GI Bill benefits? Give me a guess. For housing. How many? 200? 400? Zero? Hello. Two. Two out of 85,000. Southern politicians didn't play. All right. So, so the racial wealth gap, back here to 4. Back and forth we go. So now what we're talking about here is, the value of the racial wealth gap. Now, how high has it, what has it accumulated to at this point, right? So the amount of the bill, we're talking about 40 million eligible recipients at about $470,000 per person, which comes to 16 to 20 trillion dollars. We view the racial wealth gap as the most robust indicator of the cumulative economic effects of white supremacy in the United States. Thanks,
it's my turn.
Yes.
Let me see. Okay, here we go. So one of the things that we're going to say that I think is really provocative in this context is that a true reparations project necessarily must require federal action. And so we make the point here that reparations are not a matter of personal or individual institutional guilt. Black reparations are a matter of national responsibility. The federal government is simultaneously what we refer to as the culpable party, given the origins of the racial wealth gap, but it is also the capable party. It is the only party at this level of government that has the capacity to meet the full bill. So what do we view as the limitations of individual, organizational, state, and local reparations initiatives? What we refer to as piecemeal initiatives. So first of all, they will not satisfactorily provide restitution. Most efforts frequently involve acknowledgement. In some cases, like Evanston, Illinois, there actually has been some form of compensation. But the difficulty is that these forms of compensation are solely inadequate. And in fact, in the Evanston case, the focus on housing is problematic because although home equity is the primary source of wealth for people in the middle of the wealth distribution, we have to recognize that 97% of the wealth in the United States is held by households above the middle, above the median. And so if we focus exclusively on the characteristics of households at the middle, we're going to be excluding a vast amount of wealth that is relevant to the United States experience. More specifically, 1/4 of white households have a net worth in excess of $1 million, and this is true only for 4% of black households in the United States. And an additional point that's relevant here, if we look at that upper quarter of the wealth distribution, their primary source of wealth is not in home equity. It's in non-residential real estate, it's in financial assets like stocks and bonds, it's in business ownership, and it is in retirement accounts, which are also linked to the financial market. So the second complaint that we raise is that these are subscale, that it's impossible actually for all states and localities to meet the task of closing the racial wealth gap. Their combined budgets across the United States are $5 trillion, and we've just said that the minimum that's required to eliminate the racial wealth gap is $16 trillion. And finally, they're not systematic. They're incremental efforts that will not accomplish the goal of actually achieving the material conditions for full citizenship for Black Americans whose ancestors were enslaved in the United States. So, more specifically, if we think about state and local initiatives, we argue that they are going to necessarily be incomplete, inconsistent, and inequitable. So incomplete, they're not going to meet the task. If we were to look at the state of Illinois itself, with a Black population of about 2 million people, let's take half that population, being very conservative here, half that population as being eligible for reparations. If we take the figure of about $400,000 as the amount that would be due to close the racial wealth gap, and again, that's a very conservative number, the expense to close the racial wealth gap for Illinois' Black residents would be $400 billion, and the state's annual budget is only $55 billion. In what sense are these types of projects inconsistent? Well, they're inconsistent because they're uncoordinated and decentralized. They're essentially a patchwork where there's no attempt to integrate the various kinds of local and state policies and programs together. And finally, they're inequitable because different projects in different locations provide different benefits. So the entire national eligible population is not all going to be receiving the same type of, quotes, reparations projects. There's even variation in who is deemed eligible from location to location for reparations. We're very grateful that the focus in Illinois is on Black American descendants of U.S. slavery, but that is not true in all of these state and local initiatives. Then finally, the last thing that we'd like to say today is that, in fact, we do feel that there are some vital tasks that can be performed at the state and local level. And so we highlight them here. The first is we need an accurate historical record of the atrocities. And so each state and local commission should undertake the task of providing the most accurate historical record of how white supremacy has operated within their domain or district. The second thing is, apart from the question of compensation, Kirsten talked about pulling the knife out as a step that precedes healing the wound. And what states and localities can do is pull the knife out with respect to the policies and practices that are in place within their domain that continue to inhibit and damage and potentially destroy the lives of Black people. So we don't call this reparations. We sometimes say maybe you should call it racial equity initiatives, but each state and locality needs to eliminate the practices that are destructive of Black lives. And so that would be the second major task. The third is something that no state or local program has attempted to do, and that is aggressively support an effort to produce a comprehensive national plan for reparations for Black American descendants of U.S. slavery. That's what we think is a vital step that should be incorporated in the types of reports that are generated at the state and local level, a plan of action for promoting federal reparations, and a set of steps for how the state and localities can proceed to do that. Last comment today. We're extraordinarily pessimistic about the prospects of a reparations plan being adopted by the current United States Congress. Okay. And in fact, we never got into this mission with an expectation that this might necessarily happen in our own lifetimes. And we're kind of old now, so yeah. But hopefully it will happen in the lifetimes of many of you who are present today. I want to provide one statement as grounds for optimism. In the year 2000, a survey that was conducted by Michael Dawson and Ravana Popov at the University of Chicago found that 4% of white Americans endorsed monetary payments as reparations for Black Americans. That's FOUR in the year 2000. In the year 2024, that percentage had risen to 28, which is not a majority, but it is a sevenfold increase. And the question becomes, can we cultivate and nurture that support to reach a point at which congressional action becomes a reality? Yeah.
I wanted to add one last coda, and again, following on the footsteps of Reverend Brooks. In 1800, probably no one thought that slavery would ever end. But there were abolitionists who were putting their lives on the line and doing that work, doing the research, writing letters, raising money, having education campaigns. In 1900, very few people ever thought that women would get the right to vote. But 20 years later, that happened. I was part of the generation of young people who were helping to liberate African and Caribbean countries from the European countries that had colonized and enslaved them. I belong to an organization called the African Liberation Support Committee. And this is when we and people around the world, thank you, were fighting for the end of apartheid, which people thought it's a great thing. It's making so many people wealthy. It will never end. So we are part of the cadre of people, and there are many of us. We're on the stage with many of these people today who are doing that work, providing a blueprint, a map, if you will, so that you all can take those documents that we and others have created and move this mission forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Dr. Darity and A. Kristen Mullen. Our next featured speaker on stolen labor and hindered opportunity will be none other than Clayola Brown, who is the president of the National A. Philip Randolph Institute. Please welcome her.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. But I'm going to tell y'all from ADCRC right now, you're wrong for that. First, you invite me to come to Chicago, and it was supposed to be nice weather. It's cold as the devil out here, okay? Second of all, you have some of the most dynamic speakers that I've ever heard in a very long time speak before I get to come up here looking all raggy and country. Third, where's that pastor that preached? Well, okay, because I was getting ready to say something really bad about him. When he got to hooping and hollering, I wanted to jump up like I'm used to when I go to church and say amen and holler just a little bit because it was just wonderful. And then to have this couple come forward and teach, because that's exactly what they did. Giving the facts and the figures that were necessary in order to get things planted in our heads that were going to stick, and letting us understand that facts were absolutely necessary and essential to get things going. So I salute you as well for the work that you've done. Thank you so much for that presentation. I looked at the chairman this morning when I came into the holding room, and see, I'm from the country, y'all. I'm from South Carolina, Charleston, South Carolina. I'm a Geechee. That means as I talk, you better listen closely because I'm used to busting up the King's English at any given moment. I do have a college degree from FAMU, but it didn't stick like that, all right? My words are not going to be as eloquent or profound as some of the see, I messed up one already. As them folks that talked before I got up here. But I looked at him and I said, "My God, good morning. You sharp as a razor blade on both sides, a double edge." Look at him. Stand up for a minute, would you please? Would you do that for me? Look at this brother. You know what I'm saying? Yes. That's the kind of stuff that you feel proud about. And coming from South Carolina, I know when he said my name, you said something crazy like, "Well, who in the world named that child Clayola?" Well, I just told you. In the South, when a woman has lost a child, if it's a girl or a guy, is named after the earth. That's why you hear a whole bunch of Earth Mays and Claytons and all the rest of that stuff coming out of there, all right? And the oldest aunt gets the second half of your name. You don't get one name, you get two. Now, my mother and them named me Clay, and my oldest aunt, her name was Ola. So my name is Clayola. Now, that's how you remember stuff. You know what I'm talking about? Now, that Aunt Ola that I had was one of the meanest god doggone ladies that I've ever known in my whole life. Just mean as a snake, and she did not mind wearing the child's tail out. But facts are important to know who you are, where you came from, and how you got to be what you are today. Now, I was asked very nicely by Jackie, and I'm gonna knock you dead in your neck when we get through for coming, having me come behind all these important and smart people to talk just a little bit about stolen labor and hindered opportunities. I think you got that in an eloquent way with the facts and the labels that make it make some sense. A lot of times you go to forums like this and people talk at you instead of talking with you. These speakers talked with us because I was able to follow them, and Lord knows that's a good thing for me because otherwise I get to doing something while the talking is going on. But the conversation, which is what this ended up being, was one that made this room respond very quickly. In this room, I've got my labor family from SEIU. Would you stand up, please? Because I'm proud of you. Please stand up. And there are quite a few others that are on this, what do you call it, the streaming and all of that stuff. Uh-huh. See, I know what's going on. I just can't say it all the time in the right way, but y'all know what I'm talking about. So as we do the work that we do, the piece that I want to talk about, and I'm only going to take the 10 minutes that you gave me, sir. Okay. A part of what we have to do is to remember that you don't have to be absolutely eloquent all the time. You have to be able to talk with people who understand exactly what you're saying and be just as regular as they are and be able to get the word out. Okay? Because sometimes you just have to find the nosiest person in the community who sit outside and see everything that's going on. And then you tell them, "I got something to tell you. We're doing this stuff about reparation, but I don't want you to tell nobody." Before you can get to your car, that message is going to start to reverberate all around the community. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Don't act like you always had the connectivity that you got now. A lot of folks have cell phones and all of the other kinds of things that get them through to people. We did not have that. I'm 77 years old, so I can talk about what used to be, all right? What used to be was good, hard footwork, knocking on doors, talking with people, not at them, going and doing the work and making sure you knew where the good food was being cooked at whose house. Make that your early stop so you got a full stomach. But that's what we're needing to do with all of this information that we receive today. Inside of labor, the question is real simple. All the hopes, wishes, and dreams are wonderful things, but without action, you don't have a doggone thing. Nothing. And in order to do that, you have to take the challenge. The kind of work that you were presented today is the piece that is the stepping stone to where we want to get to. Illinois, you ought to be super uber proud of what you've put together. The kind of language that you've laid out in the reparation language that you offered us today. Name me two other states that has done that kind of work. I can't even name you one that has gone into the details that we saw here this morning. This was a pleasure. A part of All of this is to be able to look at someone once you leave here and get them as excited as you are about what needs to be next. If all you had was a good Saturday outing, then make sure you don't eat any of the snacks that they brought in the back room, all right? Because you should have come with a belly full. You didn't come to do anything but listen just for a hot minute and get gone. That does not work. If we're going to talk about the things that have to happen, then follow your gut, follow your mind. Know that if it's something that's dedicated to you, the person, make it something that you want to dedicate to someone else, a person who needs to understand that the fight for reparation is a real one. It's not something that we're doing to sound politically correct. It's something that we're doing to get what is ours. That should be about 9 minutes, correct? I'm watching you. And I think that you have exactly the gist of what I was trying to share with you. Talk without action is just a conversation. Talk with action is an accomplishment. So let's get with it, folks. When they give it to us, let's use it. I thank you all for inviting me and for having me for these few minutes of my learning. I learned today, and I appreciate all of that. Thank you all very much for having me.
Thank you so much, Clayola. Okay. All right. Now I would like to invite to the stage uh, the mayor of the village of Brooklyn, Illinois, Mayor Trinten Atkins.
Skipped around there, huh? Okay, okay. Kind of skipped around a little bit, I see, huh? Okay. Well, good morning, family, friends, and everyone here. Yeah. I'm standing in the shadow of some giants. We're in a city that honors John DeSauvo, the black man who laid the first stone of Chicago greatness. But I also stand before you as the mayor of Brooklyn, Illinois, the first black incorporated town in the nation. Thank you. But today, we must speak a hard truth. The wealth gap we see today is not an accident of fate. It is a calculated inheritance. To understand why our pockets feel light today, we have to look at how the scales were tipped centuries ago, not just in the deep South, but right here in the free soil of Illinois. While history books often point to Mississippi or Alabama, the truth is that slavery's shadow stretched all the way to the banks of the Mississippi River. Though black codes enforced indentured servitude, the system was designed to ensure that even when a black person was free, they were never truly allowed to prosper. To understand the spirit of Brooklyn, Illinois, we must first look across the river to where the shadow of slavery once loomed. In the early 1800s, to be an enslaved person was to be treated as property. Humanity stripped away and sold to the highest bidder. In 1829, Mother Priscilla Baltimore looked across the Mississippi River toward Illinois and led 11 families, a mix of horrors of Missouri slave state, on a perilous journey to the American bottoms. They named that new sanctuary Freedom Village. Even as slave catchers prowled the Illinois shore, the people of Brooklyn stood and watched when tragedy struck, when William Cowper was murdered in his own home for protecting a fugitive the community didn't break. Instead, they dug deeper. They built Quinn Chapel AM&E, where secret tunnels and passageways still exist as a testament to their work on the Underground Railroad. They proved that while the law might treat a person as shadow, no law could extinguish the divine spark of liberty. But looking through the eyes of Brooklyn, the village wasn't built on a gift. It was built on rebellion. It was founded by the formerly enslaved who crossed that river, not just to escape a whip, but to own their lives, their labor, and their land. We are the children of Priscilla Baltimore, a woman who saw a river as a gateway and a vision as a blueprint. At a time when the law said we weren't people, we built a government. At a time when the law said we couldn't own, we built a community. Yet, as Dr. King once reminded us, it is cruel just to tell a bootless man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. For generations, while others were given land grants and low interest loans, our ancestors in Brooklyn was navigating a system that actively worked to strip them of their equity. The web gap is the physical manifestation of those denied loans, restricted deeds, and stolen opportunities. But I am not here today to talk to you about what was taken from us. I'm here to talk to you and tell you what we are taking back. Brooklyn is not a museum of struggle. It is a laboratory of resilience. We close the gap, the wealth gap, by renaming it. We close it by investing with intention, not just spending our money, but circulating it. We close it by protecting our generational land so it stays in Black hands. We close it by teaching our children that they aren't just heirs to a struggle, but heirs to an empire building spirit. Brooklyn isn't looking for a handout. We are building a hand up. My experience of growing up in Brooklyn on Madison Street, that's now called the Mother Road of Route 66, for decades, the story of Brooklyn was told through the lens of what we lacked. They talked about the disinvestment. They talked about the silence of the tracks and the dust of the roads. They told a story of a town the world had forgotten. But here, I'm here to tell you that the ghosting is over. When we look around, our walls are finally moving. The signs are finally rising. For too long, the Mother Road, Route 66, acted like Brooklyn didn't exist. They mapped it, the journey, but skipped the soul. I want to mark your calendars. When we mark our calendars, I want to mark your calendars that on June 26th, on that day, we'll be celebrating the centennial of Route 66. And because of that day, we won't be just putting signs in the ground. We'll be putting Brooklyn back on the American map, where it always belonged. We are reclaiming our place on the Mother Road, and we are doing it loud and proud. That's just the beginning. We watched the railroads run through our backyards for a century, often leaving us with nothing but noise. But today, we have a partnership with that same railroad. We are moving past the decades of disinvestment into a new era of cleanup and expansion. We are making sure the industry that moved through Brooklyn now move with Brooklyn. So when people ask if our history matters, tell them to look at Quinn Chapel. That's just not a church with old bricks. We are restoring a sanctuary of freedom. We are opening those doors for tours so the world could see the fire that Priscilla Baltimore started. When people ask about how our future is funded, we tell them about the $2 million championed by Congresswoman Nikki Brzezinski for a new community center. A center that's just not a building, but it's a hub for our seniors, a classroom for our youth, and the heartbeat of the village. The world is finally tuning in. When KSD shared our Black History Month story, they weren't just reporting the past, they were witnessing a renaissance. So when people gather on June the 26th through June 28th for our homecoming reunion, we're gonna look at each other, our neighbors, and we're gonna realize that we weren't just celebrating that we survived, we'll be celebrating that we are advancing. The web gap was built over centuries, but we are closing it brick by brick, grant by grant, and sign by sign. Brooklyn isn't just a stop on the road for anymore. Brooklyn is the destination. When our children realize that their ancestors didn't just survive, they governed. So they will stop seeing history as a weight and start seeing it as a launching pad. The wealth gap is an American problem, but the solution starts in the streets of Chicago, in the streets of Brooklyn, where we are the legacy of those who crossed rivers. We are the descendants of those who built something out of nothing. And now it is our turn to build a future where our history is honored, our equity is secured, and our children will never, ever have to start from zero again. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you, Mayor Atkins. Now I'll call to the stage Fred Carter, co-founder of the Black Oaks Center. All right. Just got news that Mr. Carter is not feeling well, and we will call next to the stage Greg Kelley, the president of the Illinois State Council and HCIIMK SEIU.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Greg Kelley, and I have the honor of serving as president of SEIU Healthcare, a local union here in Illinois, Indiana, Missouri, and Kansas, 90,000 workers. And it is a union primarily of Black workers, and I'm proud to represent them. I want to first thank the members of ADCRC and, of course, Chairman Marvin Slaughter for having me here. And it's truly an honor to just be here in the space of giants and heroes like Dr. Darity. And I also want to acknowledge my dear sister Clayola, who is a mentor of mine and a giant in the labor movement. So I was asked to speak a bit today about the state of Black labor in the U.S., Jackie Algie. So I'll try to do that in the 10 minutes that I have. But I would say, in short, the state of labor in this country is abysmal. According to the Brookings Institute, in mid-2025 alone, 355,000 Black workers lost their jobs. Much of this job loss can be attributed to cuts made at the federal level of unionized workers. And has been widely reported, Black women have been disproportionately impacted by these federal cuts, leading to a nearly 33% decline in federal employment for Black women in just over a year. And for my union, which represents a number of federal workers at the VA system, the job loss has been significant. And it has gotten worse as this administration has sought to lead a mass exodus of workers, both voluntarily and involuntarily. And so we are in a moment of crisis in Black labor and amongst Black workers. And it isn't simply just because of unemployment, and it rightly gets its own attention, but the issue of underemployment and low wages has also disproportionately impacted Black workers. Again, my union, SEIU Healthcare, is a union of care workers who started coming together back in the 80s. They were home care workers, Black women, 7 of them, who had no right to form a union. They had no benefits to speak of. They were called sub-minimum wage workers, and some of them made as little as $1 an hour. In fact, they didn't even have the right to form a union because they were excluded from the Fair Labor Standards Act, meaning that they didn't make a minimum wage and they didn't have overtime, nor any of the federal protections. And so this system existed for decades until those workers right here in Chicago came together and decided that they wanted to form what is now SEIU Healthcare. And so the loss of wealth that those workers who tens of thousands over decades lost screams for reparation. We believe that as a labor union, our fundamental job is to correct wrongs. And in fact, that repair is what we try to talk about all the time as a labor union. And in fact, it is because of the work that they do and the people that they are that they were excluded from those protections. This exclusion, of course, was baked in decades ago and has had a lasting impact on these workers generations later. Seen through an historical lens, undervalued workers have relied on unions to create pathways to income and wealth growth. And so, in my own personal experience, I can refer to my dad, who was a Vietnam veteran who came back to Chicago in the early 70s. And like many of his cohort who had served and were drafted into Vietnam, they came back looking for work. And in my father's case, he worked at Cook County Jail. And if you've been around Chicago long enough, you know that back in that time, there were 2 different jails in Chicago. There was the Cook County Jail, and there was the City of Chicago Jail. My dad worked for the county jail, which many of his cohort Black veterans worked at. There was no union there. And so my dad, along with his cohort, formed the first union of correctional officers at Cook County. And so that history is important because, in fact, today, most folks know that people that work for Cook County, you get a job working at the county jail, you've got a pretty good job. And in my case, it was because of that union job that we bought our first house that we still own to this day. I was able to go to college, my siblings also as well, but it was that union difference that provided us with a path forward. And so for us, again, repair requires organizing. Unions have a fundamental role in making sure that those things are repaired. And so as I close, I get out of the way, I would argue that organizing workers and supporting unions are key to addressing the systemic inequities that continue to disproportionately impact Black Americans, repairing the damage caused by slavery, Jim Crow, and discrimination will require many different strategies. And in my view, making it easier to join a union is an important strategy. Black labor's more important than ever, Jackie Algie. And if we want to decrease wealth disparities, organizing more workers into unions is one proven method of doing it. We should all do all we can to support unions and make sure that it's easier for workers to join unions, regardless of the type of work that they do. Doesn't matter whether you have a blue collar, a pink collar, or no collar at all. The trades have their role to play, but those are limited jobs. There are only a few thousand of those at a time. But healthcare jobs, service sector jobs, there are millions of them. And if we really want to change the wealth gap increase the income of working people, of millions of working people. We need to make sure that they all have an opportunity to be in the union. And a major component of repair for Black communities must include making it easier for all workers to join a union regardless of their job. Thank you.
Now, as we prepare for the public comment section, we would like to ask for a selection from the choir. to be verified. Let's give them another round. We have now come to the part of our program that you can public comment. I will be calling up individuals in groups of 5 for public comment to the mic in the middle. Your public comment is 2 minutes. At the 2-minute mark, please understand that you will be politely interrupted to let you know that your time has expired. But we have, and we do offer a public forum at every one of our public meetings to offer public comment, and we receive public comment at our both at our website and our email at comments.abcrc@illinois.gov. Our first 5 people, Leslie Harden, Felita Atkins, James McCoy, Cole Chief, and Coleman Good.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Leslie Harden for the Village of Brooklyn, and I think we signed our name on the wrong sheet because I do not have a public comment, but since you called my name, myself and Felita Atkins, we're here with Mayor Atkins from Brooklyn. I'm his niece and she's his wife. Great job to all the speakers. This was very informative, and we support the mission of the commission, so great job.
Good morning. My name is Coleman Good, and I am a resident of Rogers Park, Chicago. I am also a descendant of people who were enslaved on this soil, and I'm here today because that history is not behind us. It is underneath everything we are still living with. I saw it when I drove Uber on the west side with the lack of grocery stores. I see it in the empty lots on the south side. I'm here in support of House Bill 1227 and the Enslavement Era Disclosure and Redress Act. This bill asks corporations and institutions that profited from enslavement of my ancestors to be transparent about that history and to contribute to repairing the harm that they caused. That is not radical. That is the bare minimum of accountability. I've lived in Chicago for over 20 years, but I consider it my home. I've made roots here. I fell in love here. I've discovered my career, found chosen family, and learned of the rich history of Black Chicagoans who built wealth that was stolen. Lived in neighborhoods like Bronxville, in Inglewood that were redlined, and attended schools that were deliberately under-resourced. The harm is documented. The perpetrators are known. What has been missing is the will to act. I am asking this commission to be the body that finally acts. I'm here with the Get Free Chicago, and we are demanding that you all adopt House Bill 1227 as a legislative priority. Go on record today as standing with the descendants of enslaved people, not in words, but in action. We have waited long enough, and we have a fascist regime that is actively targeting our community. It is time we stop telling Black people to pull themselves up by broken bootstraps. And as this country approaches its 250th anniversary, Illinois has a choice: reckon honestly with what was done, or celebrate a lie. We are here because we are done letting this state look away. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. First off, I want to thank you all for the work that you guys have put into this. Thank everybody for coming. I feel like this generation is the generation that's going to get us reparations. I feel like when it comes to when it comes to problem solving, this is why we're here. And I believe that we all have the intent to make sure that the conversations we're having right now, the next generation doesn't have to worry about. The next generation doesn't have to worry about this because we're going to handle it now. We're going to make sure the job is done with this generation. So thank every single last one of you. One thing I want to say is we need to be clear, all right? Because there's a lot of muddy waters here. There's things that are vague. One issue that I feel like we're having is the qualifications for who gets reparations, okay? The eligibility of reparations. We have to understand that this is not about unity. As great as that is, this is not about everybody feeling welcome. As great as that is, this is about solving a specific problem that has happened to a specific ethnic group of people. When I hear, thank you, everybody, thank you. I'm not trying to shush you, I'm just thank you, okay? the term African descent citizens. My thing is that's too vague. Okay, when we talked about oh, thank you, sir. When we talked about when Japanese got their reparations, all right, they didn't say Asian descent. Okay, they were very specific on who was owed reparations, and that specificity is needed in this case more than ever, because when you say African descent, that does not necessarily make sure that it's about Black Americans who are descended from American chattel slavery. And we have to be clear about that. This is not about dismissing anybody. This is not about hating anybody. They have their own claim for reparations, and I 100% support that. However, our claim needs to be specific. If we're going to solve the issue, that's okay. Thank you. Thank you.
My dear. Mic check, mic check. Mic 1 2. Mic 1. Mic 1 2. Mic 1 2. Mic check.
Yagad Rising. I am a hard mind damage survivor and crimes against humanity descendant who the United Nations, when they voted slavery a crime against humanity and said it always has been, they called it the greatest Holocaust in the history of humankind. We have to, we had a whole history, 400-year history, Negro spirituals, Negro baseball league. We had a culture for 400 years until Barack Obama, who said that he was not, Black has no standing in law, that he was not the first Black president, that he was the first Kenyan American president. He claimed a country. Like it or not, the only country that we have is the United States of America, which even Trump said Black people built this country. Harris said the middle class did it, and there was no middle class in 1776. And Biden said the immigrants built it, but we built it, and we have to claim who we are. If you are in the country before it becomes a country, you are indigenous. We are indigenous Negro American Africans. You claim the country, but never forget the continent before enslavement. And everybody else got their own issues, but everybody that came over here came over from a land that had a language, and they came by choice, whether that was Haiti or Jamaica or Ireland or Europe. They came from a country. This is our country. Indigenous Negro American Africans, NAAs without the CP. It's not that difficult. And if you're not, this was our history, as I said, for 400 years before Barack Obama came in without jurisdiction and claimed a continent. Africa is a continent with 26 countries the size of America or larger.
How y'all doing? Good morning, good afternoon. At some point, well, thank you. First of all, thank you for this meeting. Thank you for Dr. Darity and all the necessary players to get the right information. The thing is, we have to actually make sure that we actually put words into action. I think that we've had the necessary conversations online and offline. Not everybody is tech savvy. We have to make sure that we do our due diligence and stand on the right information. We have a current administration. We have one wing that wants to not have the necessary conversation unless it's convenient. We have the other side that gaslights that side and not actually do anything to fight against it. We do our generation and our next generation and our community a total disservice by not making sure that this gets done. No other community is being told that their net wealth is due to be zero in less than 30 years. No other community. And we've literally been gaslit at least 2 years ago when we saw the literal receipts of what other communities were getting, especially crossing the border, while our community that built this country, and it's the reason why this is the superpower that it is, didn't even see 1% of it. Even when they went to war and came back with blown off limbs, and all kind of PTSD. We already deal with that from slavery, but PTSD, we're fighting for this country and being told that we're getting whatever the little bit, the crumbs that we were given was being slashed in half. We have to do better as a community to make sure that this gets done. We have to do better at holding the government accountable. The only problem is when people like to play partisan games, it doesn't get us anywhere. We're not playing Democrats versus Republicans anymore. We need to hold the government accountable and say, hey, we got the paperwork as far as our lineage that traces this land. We got all kind of receipts that say that we built this from the ground up. Whereas our judge do. I don't want to hear you're hating on new people and you need to focus on yourself. We are focusing on ourselves. We are delineating and we're making sure that our stuff gets done. All I'm saying is, where is our judge do?
Hello, everyone. I see some familiar faces. Jackie Algie, Lane, Marvin Slaughter, just incredible people. My name is Erica Nanton, community organizer for St. Sabina, Auburn Gresham, Southside Chicago, former tri-chair of the Illinois Poor People's Campaign, and 2022 representative at the United Nations for the third committee to eliminate racial discrimination. So I actually went to the United Nations in 2022 with a shadow report, 21 pages with research. And actually, I saw Dr. Darity here. I also referenced you too, Marvin, and A.K. Mullins. And in that report, I basically laid out a transatlantic solution to reparations that it coincides with the local one. And the one thing I wanted to bring to the commission is that while doing this work, I think it's very important that we solidify the local work. We must protect that local work. However, when I went to the United Nations, one thing that I presented in the argument was that this was a global crime. Transatlantic slavery was not a local crime. It was a cooperative crime with multiple nations. Kidnapping millions of people from their land is a heavy lift. And it was not done by individual nations. And so also what happened was the exchanging of the funds between multiple nations. And those nations still possess those funds today. So what does that mean? That means that the very money we are commanding and demanding also turned into pounds. It also turned into francs. It also turned into other forms of currency. And so what I'm proposing to our commissions locally, globally, is that we cannot leave out a global solution because the criminals who committed the crimes against our ancestors always work globally. They always work globally to commit the crime. So if they're gonna work globally to commit the crime, they're gonna work globally to fix it. And that's what I want to say. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Lynn Mock, and I want to thank the panel for what you all have done. I'm also on the Chicago Reparations Task Force. I have a request for every person in this audience. Talk to your elders, document your harm, fill out that survey. That's what we can do right now. Talk to your relatives, talk to your friends. We need to really have a groundswell of this. My family, when I started looking through your report, it's excellent. My family suffered from educational apartheid, health issues, economic wealth disparities, and criminal justice. One of my cousins ended up in that black site over on Holman Square. He was supposed to be in jail, okay, honestly, but he was in a black site where he should not have been. I was able to trace my genealogy back to the northern part of Cameroon. And my aunt, who's our family genealogist, traced us back to a plantation in South Carolina. I know my family fits the criteria. But what I want the audience to think about is how were you impacted in terms of underinvestment in your education? We have a disease in our family that comes from Scotland. It is not found in Africa, okay? That's impacting my family for generations. My family on my mother's side is being plagued by cancer. That comes from the toxins they were exposed to in poverty here in Chicago. I've been underemployed even though I have a doctorate. We lost our family home on the west side of Chicago from predatory loans redlining kept us from investing in neighborhoods where our wealth could grow. These are issues that we need to document. So it's good to tell the panel what they need to do, but I'm telling the audience what you need to do. Talk to your family. Put your family name in the public record. Do your genealogy research. Okay, thank you.
Can we please have mic check?
My name is Deco Chief and a place to be. Southeast side of Chicago, Foundational Black American. Look, I'm just speaking because Earth, Wind, and Fire said we gotta have love for ourselves. You know what I'm saying? I feel that way. And here's the thing: they showing love to everybody else. It's hard for me being tall. Can I do this? All right. Hey, look. The neighborhood where I stay over east near Commercial, they spent $70 million on building the streets up in less than 2 years. I've been living over there for over 50 years, and they would never even spend enough money to fix potholes. You dig what I'm saying? When they brought them people over there, they gave them all places to stay in the same buildings that some of my brothers and sisters was trying to use as community centers. They refused, but they moved immigrants inside. Hey, look here. On that same strip where they spent all that money, those immigrants are now opening businesses. My friends who I grew up with went to elementary school with. I have 5 different friends from 5 different families living in one house because all of their houses getting snatched. I did a survey from Colfax to Commercial, which is a 6-block walk. On every block, there's one immigrant that owns at least 4 houses. I'm saying this ain't right. Now, if we gonna go on here, reparations is a must. It's very important. But if our focus is on reparations for the world and not for Black Americans, then hey, you see where they at now. Where you think they're gonna be after they get that coming there? So my thing is, let's stand strong, be proud as foundational Black Americans, and put ourselves first. That's all I have to say. Land my plane.
All right. I would like to invite our next batch of 5 up to the stage. Alberto Williams, Mr. Stephen A. Dillard, Miranda Alexandria, Daryl J. Hurd, and Shelby Thurman.
Hello, my name is Alberto Williams. I am a local Chicagoan and living in the Rogers Park area. And this is my first time ever coming here. And I just want to express how grateful I am to be able to have been referred to this by my friend Coleman, who was up here. And I want to say how grateful I am to be able to learn about things like this as somebody who is in predominantly white areas. That's my schooling with Chicago, with DePaul, as in computer science, as well as like neighborhood I live in. And one thing I wanted to bring up, I want to say to everybody in the audience as well as the board, is to keep speaking about the issues and don't water them down to make, I guess, like this is issues that I face being in predominantly white areas, and don't water them down to make, I guess, white people more comfortable. Because the thing is, like, if they, the more, as I've seen throughout the years when we had Black Lives Matter go through, when that trend that was kind of handled as was over, you started seeing these environments quickly revert back to their initial black segregation and tokenizing ways. Well, tokenizing was probably the only new thing they brought up, and it was like trying to like be performative about things. And I want to encourage people to not be happy with to look at how things are being handled by our white people and really like look at it. Is this real? Are they really trying to fix and understand the issue, or are we just trying to get performative? One thing I've seen that is a quick disclosure indicator of it is give me the solution right now. I don't want to hear the problem, just give me solution. And that's all I got.
Hello, my name is Steve Dillard, brother A-Law from A-Law Solutions, which means against living among white supremacy. I see what you guys are trying to do, which we know that each and every one of you guys are probably educated correctly. Are you? Yes. So when you're trying to bring a bill or any type of reparations, you know that it's going to be shut down because they don't do race-based reparation. You put up African. African is not constitutional. Africans are not in the Constitution. So are you working with the Democrats to make a bill and to kill a bill to say that we tried? This is the type of coonery and buffoonery that we have in politics. We have black faces, and I don't know what this dude is, but we have black faces who out here just come in and just say that, guess what? We're going to try to stop foundational black Americans from getting their reparations. I'm worried about the children, you old people who are up there who's getting a check, because you are getting a check for coming up here every month. Who's paying you to get a check to come up here and do this nonsense? And Mr. Smiley Face, you are just despicable as a man. So I really don't know. I don't care. I don't care. But the deal is this: reparations, cash reparations, and protection. An anti-black crime bill. Now, one of you guys even talk about an anti-black crime bill.
Time.
That's why we all get killed in the streets.
Before we continue, I would like to make one thing perfectly clear. We will have order in this public hearing. For those individuals who are not familiar with this commission that has been in operation for 4 years, we are a lineage-based commission. Read the bill language. Do not pay attention to just the title of the commission. Read the bill language. This commission is for American descendants of slavery. Period. So we understand the lineage argument very well. We have been meeting for 4 years, and we have addressed the issue of making sure that we have something that can withstand legal scrutiny. And in addition to that, every commissioner here is a volunteer. We put in thousands of hours of work to be able to address this issue on behalf of our community. Not a single cent is paid out to us, and you can check. You can FOIA that information. Now, thank you all so much. Please continue.
Got you. Good afternoon. Thank you guys for all your hard work and all your speakers for coming out and sharing your knowledge with us. But I'm here to demand that the Illinois Reparations Commission formulate a request letter to Governor Pritzker. This request letter will demand Governor Pritzker sign executive orders for the repair of descendants of U.S. chattel enslavement. These executive orders will include, but not limited to, specific designation for descendants of U.S. chattel enslavement. As descendants of freedmen, establish an office of descendants of freedmen affairs and immediately reallocate 50% of minority set-asides for grants, contracts, employment services. Because we need our benefits right now. We can't wait no longer. It's time. This political arena has shown us that we don't have to wait on no bills. That our governors and our mayors, they can sign executive orders to get things done. So I'm asking that this commission formulate a letter and demand that Governor Pritzker do these things by executive order to get the ball moving. Because what I don't want to do is sit on the bill and talk for another 4 years. I'm ready to see action, and I'm ready to see results. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now hear this. Now hear this. Reparation now. Reparation now. I'm Brother Darrell Hurd. I'm with the Chicago Nicoba chapter. I work with the African descendant affiliations and a lot of coalitions in this here group to try and get reparations now. So that therefore all of us is iterating the same thing, reparations now. If you're not familiar with the Chicago Nicoba chapter, I will have handouts that you can get in contact with us. But without delay, and with all I have to say is that there's a lot of ongoing projects. HB 1227, we're trying to get through the state of Illinois. The city of Chicago is doing outstanding things. The state of Illinois is doing outstanding things. We are a leader and a pace setter throughout the world for reparations now. That's all I got to say.
Thank you.
I don't know. Look, see, I'm trying to make it work. I'm short, but you know what? I'm gonna make it happen. Hey, y'all. My name is Miranda Alexandria. That was just my co-chair from the Chicago Cobra chapter, and I'm also the co-chairwoman, right? And a lead organizer with an emerging organization. Get free, talk about it. All right, raise your hands. It's a millennial and Gen Z-led organization for reparations, and I am here. And a member of the city reparations task force. Right, thank you. I'm here to ask the commission to adopt House Bill HB 1227, also known as the Illinois Enslavement Era Disclosure and Redress Act, as a legislative priority, because this bill requires no taxpayer dollars and no mandates. It asks that corporations that benefited from Black people from the slave trafficking, we need to stop calling it a trade because it was not a trade, it was trafficking, and the enslavement era and any indirect financial benefits, they have to be transparent about that history. And it creates pathways to redress as a foundation for our reparations, okay? So Illinois has the opportunity to lead the nation for a corporate accountability framework with this bill because it is market-based, dignity-centered, and it is a bill whose time has come. So I'm just grateful for this commission's leadership. Everybody who's in here, I definitely see a couple of familiar faces. And I just want to say thank y'all because y'all here on a Saturday afternoon doing the work. So thank you. We are ready to move forward with you all for the next step. All right. Thank y'all.
Thank you so much. The next group of 5, we have Dr. British Reynolds, R. Brown, Marlon Watson, Sharina Horslin,
Hi, my name is Dr. British Reynolds. I have a background in public policy and urban education and also a former CPS teacher. I want to thank all the speakers. I was truly inspired by what you had to say. I do have a question. When it comes to reparations, particularly when it comes to public education, particularly here in Chicago, what is the commission currently doing to build networks and collaborative relationships to make sure funds are allocated, particularly in historically divested communities here in Chicago that directly impact Black folks, right? To make sure schools are resourced with materially, but also with teachers who have the knowledge and the care to care for our kids, right? And then also, what are we doing to ensure the communities in which those schools exist also are allocating funds to make sure repair and care is set in action? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, panel. I would like to say that reparations is for foundational Black Americans, and we should put other Black groups involved in this in our reparations here in this country, and we should get reparations also from Ghana, Ivory Coast, Nigeria. We should not only get financial assistance, but land, from these West African countries, and we should get land and financial benefits from this country, United States. And reparations now a no vote for either party. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Marlon. Thank you, Marvin. Once again, this is a great panel. And all y'all that keep jumping on the name of the panel, y'all got to quit telling on yourselves. Read the bill. I know Marvin personally. He was part of that first group that took lineage-based reparations online and then it took off across the nation. He was part of that first group. So we appreciate the passion, but come with facts. All right? But that's not even why I came up here. I came to thank Dr. William Darity and Kirsten Mullins. I had the opportunity to interview Dr. Darity online a few years ago. You got to forgive me for fanning out, but I hope I can get a picture with you and Kirsten before y'all leave. All the talk we hear about lineage-based reparations, whether it's FBA, American Freedmen, ADOS, all that comes from Dr. Darity, whether we know it or not. When you talk about, and I'm not talking about the vitriol related to it, when you talk about the modern era reparations schematic, who gets it, how much it should be based on data, who should pay it, how it should be distributed, that's Dr. Darity from 30, 40 plus years ago talking the same thing the same way. I see work from Darity from the 90s talking about it should be for those whose families were promised 40 acres and a mule. He didn't say FBA, but that's who that is. So I'm not trying to idolize Dr. Darity, but I just want to thank you and put on record that we're all pulling from the well of Darity scholarship.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you. Our next group, we have Christian Harris, Clifton Graham, Charles Muhammad, and Tyra Banks.
Okay.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. Good to be here with you all. My name is Christian Harris. I am founder, former chair of the Oak Park Reparations Task Force, currently on the Chicago Reparations Task Force, and proud resident of Over East, 75th and Yates as well, and also a proud descendant of my oldest known ancestor, Fountain Blackwell, born 1807, enslaved. I'm here today to thank the Commission for their work. I know dealing with the still unhealed traumas of your ancestors is not easy, and so I appreciate you all for carrying this work. And to urge you to support House Bill 1227, the Enslavement Era Disclosure and Redress Act, to include that as one of your legislative priorities. I'm somebody that believes deeply that the federal government needs to truly account for the harms, but also that the state of Illinois has done harms to my family that need to be healed, that the city of Chicago has done harms to my family that they need to account for and need to address. So here's what this bill does. Any corporation seeking a state contract in Illinois worth $50,000 or more will be required to research and publicly disclose whether their organization has historical ties to slavery or the slave trade, and that disclosure becomes a part of the public record. Those corporations then have the opportunity to contribute to a redress fund. And this does something very profound. It moves us from silence to acknowledgement, and acknowledgement is where repair and healing begins, as we saw in the presentation today. For corporations, this can create an internal reckoning process, a structured opportunity to understand how their institution's history may still be shaping internal policies and who they serve. That kind of honest institutional self-examination is rare. This bill helps make it routine. For the state of Illinois, I truly believe enforcing this bill with openness and rigor is an act of institutional integrity. It's an act of good faith to Black people. And it can help restore our faith that government can be used as a tool for equity. By opening up the procurement process, support the bill, learn more about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harris.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
To the esteemed commission, I'm honored to be here in your presence and have this opportunity just to say a couple of words. And also to the honorable audience, those who are here and tuning in, thank you for everybody who supports these efforts. And as Brother Malcolm was acknowledged earlier in the program, he said many years ago that our case needs to be taken to the United Nations. And finally, last month, the United Nations General Assembly acknowledged what Malcolm had been trying to do for the longest. So even though we honor our ancestors and what work have been going on, I too will join that crew and pass this baton on to the future generations. I just want to make briefly a comment that we have been robbed of our extrinsic wealth in terms of the material wealth, but we also are being robbed of our intrinsic wealth, which is way more valuable, and everybody wants to appropriate what we have internally, and not only physically, our labor and all the things we contribute to building this country, but don't let them continue to rob our culture, our natural inheritance that we're passing on to the future generations, because that is so valuable. And I don't want to see my grandchildren have to suffer the trauma that we've had to go through. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Tyra Banks. Not that one, but this one. I just want to say that when I first came into the conversation of reparations, it made me dig deeper into my ancestry, which was given to me by my great Aunt Martha some years ago. And doing my DNA and finding out who and what I come from. My family was exiled from Monroe, Georgia, 100 years ago. So I stand on the shoulders of that past. After digging deeper, I found out every Black man in my family was in the military, fought in the war in this country. So I stand on the shoulders of every veteran and of every war. I also stand here for my husband. I stand here for my father. I stand here for my uncle, who has never received a dollar for what they did in the military. However, they do receive their veteran benefits for the medical piece. My husband is the only one that benefited from the housing bill. So thank you for that information, because I didn't know. So me being here today, taking off work to be here, is important for my great nieces and nephews. And I will continue to carry on the Fulani tribe and the Creek tribe. But I also want to say, if you want to dig deeper about this African piece, look at what Essence, the owner of Essence, is doing to our Essence magazine and our Essence festival, because it's important, right? And that's really all I wanted to stand up and say, because I wasn't going to say anything. I just signed up in case I did. And I'm glad that I'm here, and I'm glad for the commission. And I actually just got the email yesterday. So I'm glad that I passed the email on to people, and I'm glad that I came. So thank you for the works that you guys are doing. It is impactful to the youth. It is impactful to me, and it's impactful to my mother and my great, 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 greats. So thank you. And that's why I wanted to stand up. Thank you for the audience. This room should be filled. This room should be filled with the youth. This room should be filled with us, because this is important conversations, and I've been inspired to do more. So I just wanted to say thank you to each one of you up there for doing the work that you're doing, because although some may not be impacted and may not feel it, I do, and I know a lot of people will. So thank you.
Thank you, my sister.
Clifton Graham Jr. Real quick, I just like to, poor brother over there, he got booed and everything like that, so I don't want to get booed. Let you know that this man right up there is like a son to me, so what I'm about to say is nothing, and nothing but positive critique of the event today.
as I walked in, you know, my mother was 50% blind and 90% deaf. So I recognized visual. That's what I recognized visual. When I walked in here today, I saw the white woman at the front desk. It reminded me when I was at EIU, president of the Black Student Union, when I came back and saw the white people, white woman, taking the names and information of the Black Student Union and not the representative of our own. So I asked myself as I looked at all that stuff, I said, dang, where is the white woman in this problem that we're having right now? Where are they at right now? What are they doing right now? I see them here, but I do not see them there. And they are the critical part of what's going on. This wasn't my speech at first. And what I'm real gonna be quick about is that we need to look at their net worth and what they're doing, their part, to make this happen. This is my third or fourth event coming here. And visually, I have never seen the governor. Visually, I've never seen the governor. Visually, today, I see the panel, and I finally see two people pick up a pen to recognize what we were saying and taking notes of what we were saying. See, I'm visual. I'm a best friend when you're my friend, okay? But I want to know, how serious are we, not you, but the governor, about this situation? We need to go to Springfield in March. That's where I took our land before. It wasn't just Rosewood, it was in Springfield. We need to get right ahead and make this, if necessary, we have to think about, and the panel needs to think about, another Civil War, Civil War II. Thank you.
We have two additional names on the list that I'll call, Miyako Rosenthal and Hunter Adams. If anybody else would like to give public comment, please come on down and line up. Thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Miyako Rosenthal. I'm the founder and president of Roots and Boots. We are a non-for-profit. We provide genealogy research for descendants of the emancipation of 1865. We also offer free lineage verification for our descendants as well. So when reparations does pass, we'll be lineage verified and we'll know who is qualified for reparations. On top of that, I would like to start off by quoting Malcolm. Malcolm said, what is an Aborigine? He said, when I look around the world, everybody that is an Aborigine looks like me. This color, right here. He also said, we didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us. I say that to say, as a genealogist and doing genealogy work, when I'm digging through the archives and the records, that I'm finding that a lot of our ancestors did not come from Africa. A lot of our ancestors came from right here in the Americas and were reclassified throughout the centuries. So when we think about reparations, we have to think about reparations and starting from that point with the United States of America. All the rest of this is just noise. When it's coming from Chicago reparations and any other reparations task force, when it's coming from the federal government, we have to take into consideration the fact that we have been reclassified throughout the generations. So our repair and restitution involves more than just a check. It involves protection. It involves land. It involves health, mental, and so forth going on in an all-encompassing package for our people. We cannot sit by and just allow it to be based on African descent, because African descent is not the base of us. I commend you, Slaughter. When I first started talking to you, it was always about lineage based.
Thank you, sister.
Good afternoon. Thank you, the commissioner, Mr. Slaughter, Dr. Slaughter, and all the commissioners for your work over these past 4 years. My name is Hunter Adams III. I am a cultural neuroscientist. I'm a board member of the Humanity Pack Alliance based in Portugal in the United States, an associate member of the then Center, the Center for Advancement of Neurobiology and Trauma. I have three quick points that I'll make. First one is addressed to Dr. Darity and his dearly beloved. I guess they must have stepped out. But I did some research, and there's an estimated $240 trillion accumulated in wealth from 1790 to 2013. So the calculations for debt has to be compared with how much wealth was accumulated by corporations, institutions, and individuals. The second point to you, the commissioner, I gave a presentation to the National Council of Black Lawyers, 24 Harms of Ethnocide, which is an extension of the United Nations ethnocide criteria, that we have to have more specificity in the harms that were done. And so I have 24 classifications, which will be available in my forthcoming book, We Were Never Slaves, the Neuropolitics of Being Human. Two, we must stop calling our ancestral casualties of crimes of state slaves. They were human beings who were enslaved, right? And I would urge the commission to have some sort of language to that effect. And you can sit with me, I have the language in public statements, because part of the task is to reclaim and reaffirm our humanity. The Portuguese called the captives that they first stole in the early 15th century ransom captives. They didn't use the word slave, right? In the document, the papal bull, they didn't use the word slave, they used servient. So, and I talked about this at the G20 summit in 2024, 2025. I've talked about this at, okay. So I would lastly just ask that the state of Illinois have an executive order to assert that we are human beings, not beings of inferior order, as the Chief Justice did in 1857. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to the commission. I am Dr. Akilo Mukaram, president of the Afro-Descendant Nation. Thank you. I would like to say that I'll recommend to the commission that you elevate using Afro-descendant. Afro-descendant peoples is what we're recognized in the United Nations globally. And just to elevate us from racial discrimination to ethnocide. Afro-descendants are not simply a demographic within a broader category. We are a distinct people of African descent. We are people formed through forced displacement from Africa, chattel enslavement in the Americas, and the systematic erasure of our mother tongue African languages and identity. This history did not just disperse a population, it produced a new people. Without precise recognition, Afro-descendants remain visible in discussion, but invisible in outcomes. And that is my recommendation for today. We were people that were forcibly displaced from Africa, transported to the Americas for the purposes of enslavement, subjected to slavery, subjected to forced mixed breeding and rape, experienced through force the loss of our African mother tongue languages, culture, and religion, and or have experienced through racial discrimination from partially lost ties or lost ties from our original identity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I am Leslie Triplett Bracy, and I was invited here by a friend of mine, so I want to thank her for the invitation. And I wanted to say thank you to all of the people on the board for doing this work that is so critical to all of us. Just one point of order. I didn't like some of the disrespect that was happening in the room, and I just wanted to say that we can be disagreeable. We can disagree without being disagreeable. So that's one thing. And I didn't know that the massacre in East St. Louis was as widely known. My family is from East St. Louis and lived through that massacre. And so it was quite, well, they knew some around there. So my family is from East St. Louis. And so it was quite interesting for me because it's one of the things that we talk about as a family. I'm actually from St. Louis and transported here and have made Chicago my home. And then my other thing is I agree that the room should be full. It's such an important conversation. It's such important work that you all are doing. And I wish that the rooms were more full. And so my request is, how can we help make that happen? How can we be more involved? How can we more support your effort? So that would be my request. Thank you.
Thank you, my sister.
Quick question, because of the sake of time. Does anyone else in the room have a number? Anyone else with a number? So Chair Slaughter, everyone else now is just lining up based on time. I know we're going to about 10 more minutes. We'll get through as many as we can.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Shavonna Hunt, and I am here as a representative of Hustle Mommies Digging for Our Roots. I do an ancestry club every last Saturday of the month at Burst Into Books, which is a Black-owned bookstore located at 119 East 107th Street in Chicago, Illinois. If you are interested in learning more about your ancestry, please come join us. I also do workshops and seminars for free. I'm trying to get them back into the library. So we will be back at the bookstore in May. I also want to say I encourage you all to research your ancestry. You saw the eligibility up there. I want you all to research your genealogy because a lot of you are descendants of people that were indentured servitude indentured servants in Illinois. So if you are in Chicago, some of you are the people that are in the report. If you read the report, you will see that there are specific families, and I know that some of the descendants of that family is here today, and they were technically enslaved. Okay, so your information could help with what they are doing, and the what they're trying to just any type of campaign or anything that they're putting forth. You might be a direct descendant of an Illinois enslaved person, and that's all I want to say. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Shavonna.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Michael Franklin. I am a qualified mental health professional, and I have about 25 or 30 years in the game of working with young people and families and what I call save the world stuff. I have some ideas on building infrastructures for civic engagement and mental health in a way that would educate and get people involved and developing a social awareness and a consciousness of what we're doing here today. And it's my first time here today, so I'm going to hang around afterwards and just look for who I should be following up with, especially in the areas of mental health and civic engagement with youth. Thank you.
Thank you, my brother.
Okay then. Hello everybody. I'm DNA from the African Diaspora Information Center and the Temple of the African Community of Chicago. I'm here to represent descendants of enslaved Africans. All right. So I understand there's a big conversation. I hate to be rude during people comments, but I do want to push back certain what I feel like black people being enculturated into American xenophobic culture. All right, because the history of this country is clear. We don't have to go into the details, but no, when you talk about the federal government, W.E.B. Du Bois was the first black person, when you say, to graduate from Harvard with a PhD. Carter G. Woodson was the second black person to graduate from Harvard with a PhD. And then when they did the research all came back the same. Carter G. Woodson created Black History Month to remind black people that they come from Africa, because W.E.B. Du Bois did the research and realized that they were trying to convince us that we were already here and they just came over here and dominated us and took over the land. But in actuality, the United States government segregated for servitude people of African descent and excluded from the government people who are already here. All right, so the history is clear. So I just wanted to say that, and I enjoyed the conversation, and I appreciate the leadership for people volunteering and do this type of work. All right, and that's us.
Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Melody Slaughter. I'm that one's sister. I didn't think I was going to speak, but I guess I should have just signed up in advance again, like since I already know how things tend to go down. I believe as a Christian that I am called to the ministry of reconciliation, and I believe that that's not possible without repair. And I feel as though I would like to speak more so, first of all, just to my brother and the massive amount of time, energy, family time, and commitments that he's made, that he's sacrificed throughout the years in order to make this commitment for our community. And again, as somebody, another beautiful young lady said earlier, we can disagree without, getting disrespectful. And that is a man, that is a human. And so if we are here today to talk about and educate and fight and advocate for our rights as human beings, we need to see one another as also human beings first and foremost. And so I really just wanted to come up here and say that. I also wanted to say that, for those who are not Black, thank y'all for y'all allyship, because we need your support too. It's not going to happen alone. This is not going to get done alone. And I think we also need to understand, yes, speak truth. I'm not saying not to speak truth, but y'all don't have to beat people up over the head. You don't got to yell at folks. You don't got to cuss nobody out. If they disagree, they disagree. That's fine. But let's love one another, okay? Let's love one another as we advocate for ourselves, because those two things can coexist. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon. My name is Denzel Johnson. I'm from the far south side of Chicago, from the West Pullman Roseland neighborhood. Grew up in Auburn Gresham. But I'm here today as a member of this community, as someone who lives with the consequences of history every day. And whether or not my family is directly enslaved or not, I need to do my genealogy. So I'll be tapping in at Births on Books to make sure I understand that more. I'm here in support of House Bill 1227. I'm sorry. The bill was already spoke about, so you already know what the bill entails. But I just want to see that this investment from Chicago change. I've seen it in the way that we walk, the way we carry ourselves in our schools, hospitals, you name it. This is a direct result of policies that were built to exploit us. And a lot of times we're put against each other and not fighting the systems which have been putting us this way. So I'm here, I'm with Get Free. So I want to make sure I shout out my family that brought me into the room today. And I just ask that you all as the commission adopt the House Bill 1227. As you know, America's birthday is coming up 250 years. And I want to see in my, as I'm alive, I'm 29 years old. I hope we don't take 250 more years for us to be able to get this off the ground and actually make this something implemented into the world that we know today. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We have time for one more comment.
you. Hi, my name is Christy Kingsley. I'm the founder of Ubuntu Yami. In Swahili, it means I am because we are a community. And it's for to support entrepreneurs, creators, and professionals who are Black to uplift and support our businesses. As you all know, our dollars only circulate for a certain amount of hours. But in other countries and cultures, it's for years, decades. And so if we don't buy Black, bequeath Black, barter Black, invest Black, build Black, then what are we doing? And so I always say, think about people that live down the street from you. John, who makes an awesome pie, he needs your support. Sarah, who's an awesome seamstress, get your clothes tailored. Think of those people first before you go into another community because those other groups are supporting their people first, as it should be. And so, that being said, I also participate at Burst into Books with Shavana Hunt, her Ancestry Club. Years ago, when I was studying dance in college at Columbia, I had an African dance teacher that taught at Muntu, and he was like, "Do you all know where you come from?" And I was like, that Olympia Fields, the suburbs, whatever." He was like, "No, like, can you actually trace your family?" And I did. I traced it on my mother's side to the 17th century. He made us write a paper, and I can trace my father's side on the 18th century. So it's important about knowing who you are and what you are. So my point that I'm making is, this room should be filled. As a former Girl Scout troop leader, I did it for 15 years. I did with high schoolers, freshmen through seniors, Black girls in Chicago. I would implore you all to reach out to the young people, Jack and Jill, your Facebook groups. They need to be here. I understand we have, what, a 35 and older crowd in here, but where are your teens? That is the future. You must look back and say, let me get the babies. Find ways to incentivize parents to bring them here. I know it's like, well, this is free. We're giving our time, but something, give them I don't know, a free ice cream cone, something that gets people here so that we can all talk because it's important that we're talking, but the youth are also watching us. So I just wanted to say that. So thank you so much.
Thank you. That now concludes public comment. Thank you, Patty, for your allyship. I wanna go ahead and acknowledge all of the elected officials in the room. First, starting with our very own elected official, Representative Sonia Harper, who's a commissioner. Are there any additional elected officials in the room outside of Mayor Atkins? Thank you again for you coming out today. Okay. All right. So y'all, now the exciting part kind of comes. We've talked and we've learned a lot about a lot of different things: the religious imperative of reparations, the economic imperative, the origins of the racial wealth gap. Now we get to talk about next steps. And our next steps include a survey. We have created and compiled a list of policy recommendations for the state of Illinois to redress the harms that it has caused individuals who are descendants of U.S. chattel slavery in the state of Illinois. We want you all to go on this survey. We want you to rank our policies. We want you to tell us, out of these policies, what do you care about the most? So when we hear individuals talk about an executive order to the governor, we need numbers. We're going to need support. When some of this stuff has to get legislated, Rep. Sonia Harper is going to need 1,000 of y'all down in Springfield beating down doors in the same way that individuals like to come to the mic and beat that down at these public hearings. So we encourage you all to take the survey. We have put in a lot of work to be able to develop these policies. We're at a stage now where we're just looking for your input as far as where do these policies fall with respect to how you think about what you need. We have, requested recommendations from community organizations, the NAACP, the Cook County Bar Association, the Prairie State Medical Society, to be able to address issues under each of our harm areas. So each of these recommendations is tied explicitly to a harm category that is in our report, which will give us some legal protection. So we encourage you all to be able to take this survey, both allies and individuals who are descendants. And we encourage you to share this survey. We want 800,000. We want 1 million respondents. We want as many respondents as we can get to be able to show the momentum for this issue. So there are approximately 1.6 million Black individuals in the state of Illinois. Well, I want 1.6 million surveys, so y'all got homework. All right. Has everybody had an opportunity to scan the QR code. If you haven't had the opportunity to scan the QR code, the survey is also on our website at adcrc.illinois.gov. It's a survey tab at the top. You can go there, send it to all your friends, all your family, have Sunday morning conversations about it, Sunday dinner conversations about it. Talk to all your friends and family about it. We're going to take the results of this survey. We're going to roll that into legislation. We're going to roll that into things like recommendations to the governor for executive orders. And we're going to go with that demand. But we need your energy. So everybody who showed up here today, we thank you because this matters. But we also encourage you to stay in contact with us as a commission. We have monthly public meetings, and the next couple months are going to be extremely important as we're approaching a general election. This is a perfect time to apply pressure. So if you care about this issue, you care about the issues that we've outlined, the solutions that we've outlined in our survey, we ask that you come out, to use your voice, that you use your organizing talents, that you use the social capital that you have, that you bring your families with you to be able, so we can put y'all to work as far as some of this advocacy work. All right, you all. Follow us on our social medias. We do have Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. We post relatively often. We will be around briefly towards the end. I'll stick around for a bit for those who want to have conversations around strategy. Other than that, we thank you all for your attendance at this public hearing, and I ask that you all go forth in peace. Thank you. If at all possible, can we get all of the speakers to the stage? All of the speakers to the stage for a speaker photo.
Please move items 71 and 72 to the inactive file.
I just want to know, what did you know about bills not being brought to the floor? The two critical reparation bills, Senate Bill 1403 and Senate Bill 13.
Forgive me, because there's over 1,000. I'm not very good at the numeric, but
that it's gonna. The analysis said it's only a couple $1 million to stand it up. And his response was, we want to do it in a different way. We don't want to do it through creating a whole new bureau. We want to do it through the UC system.
So this is Assemblyman Mr. Bryan. He's mad I brought up the reparations vote. So he's preventing me from speaking. And he's trying to block my access here.
Madam Speaker, I ask that we take up file item 71, SB 1331.
If you decide to start your family tree even without the DNA, 8 or 9 times out of 10, you're going to find your family.
A great number of African Americans can trace their lineage to the period of enslavement.
Lemert was developed by Walter H. Lemert, and in his designing this area, he actually had covenants to where they would not sell to black people.
I supported the bill all session.
Then bring the bill.
Will you vote?
CLBC, can you give them a grade 1 to 10?
Oh, this current crop, as of now, it's a negative.
Vote for the bill, Mr.
Bring the bill.
Will you vote for the bill?
Bring it up.
Will you vote for reparations?
Bring it
I
up.
would love it.
Bring it up.
Let's vote for reparations
Bring
together.
It's a spirit of anti-blackness, and we must call it out. And so I'm going to call out on August 31st, 2024, that the California Legislative Black Caucus, the majority of them, and the governor allowed the enemy to use them to try to keep us down and keep us as bottom-class citizens.
Just think that all the other members have at least about 10 years left. So we're not going anywhere.
I've heard it slightly changed, and some of the advocates who were part of the coalition last go-around are now expressing concerns of whether or not they'll still be able to stand behind it if those changes are not corrected.
In so many years, it will hardly be no black folks left in California. We love y'all, we thank y'all, and we demanding reparations right now. First of all, America, from the evidence that they gave us, you're guilty.
What happened on August 31st, 2024 was a betrayal.
We know that if we don't have our hand in this process as much as we possibly can, it can be corrupted from the outside. So in terms of our role isn't done until they are issuing the checks for our reparations.
The time for reparations is now.
Yeah.
It's now. What do we want?